Hey, everybody, really excited for this conversation today. AI agents and identity in this new era is one of the hottest topics right now in cybersecurity and beyond. And companies are racing to adopt agentic AI. And what are the implications in terms of challenges and opportunities for the enterprise? Matt from Okta, how are you?
I'm good. How are you? Thanks for having me.
I'm doing great. Really admired the work you and the team are doing at Okta for some time. Before that, maybe introduce yourself, who you are, what you do at Okta, and what's keeping you busy these days.
Yeah, my name is Matt Immler. I'm the regional CSO for the Americas at Okta. I've been here for about 9 years. Originally started with the Auth0 side of the house and came over during the acquisition in 2021. But I spend a lot of my time with security projects in the U.S., escalations, calls and things like this, and really just kind of talking to our customers about, what's going on in both the identity world and more frequently now how that relates to AI.
Yeah, such a fascinating topic. Why is it? Why has identity suddenly become the center of all of these conversations the last couple of years? And what's driving that?
Yeah, so identity has become more and more of a focus these days in the security world because we're kind of moving past a little bit the point where, you know, 0 days and trying to break in the front door that way is becoming as feasible as just trying to take over somebody's identity and impersonate them to get in. So identity has become more of that first step that attackers are using. It's a kind of a lower bar for them in a lot of cases to try to get access to networks and to businesses. And so we're just starting to see that take a lot more focus away from some of what those traditional methods of security are, your traditional firewalls, your traditional, IDSs, things like that you might see, and more along the lines of, how do we secure our identities?
Yeah, really important conversation. Of course, non-human identities are now front and center. How do you describe what that means in plain English for maybe your friends and family who aren't steeped in security speak?
Sure. So when we talk about non-human identities, we're talking about identities or accounts that are not actually backed by a real person. So traditionally, for a very long time, this was service accounts, which, they had a single job, a single purpose. They did one thing repetitively. And now these days, over the last couple of years, we're looking more at what this looks like in terms of agentic AI. So AI agents that are acting on behalf of humans. And so although they're still not an actual real person, they're able to do things dynamically. They don't have a set path that they're going to follow. So they can, kind of rationalize and make decisions on their own, but they're still not an actual human identity.
Yeah, really well said. And how big of a trend is this in enterprises that you talk to every day in terms of the machine identity reality, the problem, let's say, even? Is it, thousands in a large enterprise? Are we going to get to millions this year or next?
Yeah. So one of the biggest things I hear across, all of our customers that I talk to is just the, increasing pressure that they're feeling from either their board or their CEOs that, we can't fall behind. This AI push is big, so we need to implement now. We need to implement fast. We need to make sure that we stay ahead of our competitors. And a lot of times what that's causing is security to fall a little bit by the wayside in the efforts to try to roll these things out as quickly as possible. So what's keeping security teams up at night is, the speed at which they're being forced to allow these sort of things to operate in their networks. And a lot of times the big issue is they don't even know how many are in their networks. And that's the big problem and where a lot of that heartache is coming.
Yeah, unknowns are never good. And so we've gone from AI assistants that really don't quite work, but we try to use them, to AI agents that are actually taking action on our behalf that are really compelling. I have 4 different agents that are working for me now as we speak, from Claude Cowork to Manus and OpenClaude. And I'm a little bit of an early adopter, to say the least, but they're doing real work. And I'm a little concerned personally, but now compound that into an enterprise of thousands. How does agentic AI really completely change the security equation?
Yeah. So as I kind of mentioned, one of the biggest issues that we have right now in the security equation is visibility. So
Mm.
a lot of times, one of the biggest things I hear is that, you know, employees or users inside a company's systems, they're going and they're trying to keep up with the mandate that they've been given to implement and use AI. And so, everybody wants to get ahead, everybody wants to be the first, everybody wants to be innovative, and they're going finding these cool new tools out there that they can put to use in their daily job. But what happens a lot of times is they go and they introduce this tool and they essentially are letting it impersonate them on the company system. So, we're all probably very familiar with that consent box that comes up that says, you've logged in with this. Do you want it to be able to allow it to access your email, your whatever else, things like that. So now you have these non-human identities, these agentic AI, users, quote unquote, actually coming in and doing work on behalf of the employee or the user of that organization. And there's not anything that's necessarily directly, differentiating it from what the IT and security team sees from their end. So they don't know if those actions are being taken by a real user that's been trained, knows to follow policy, all those sort of things, or something that's, non-human.
Yeah, and do you think the concern is mostly about app usage, or is it access to data? Is it API usage? Systems. Where are the concerns and the holes, the gaps today?
Yes.
Okay, so that was easy.
No.
So
So data is one of the biggest concerns.
yeah,
So when we're talking about that consent flow that I just mentioned, when a user is granting access to their data as part of this, allowing an agent to act on their behalf, a lot of times they don't realize the extent of what data they're providing access to. So I always joke around and use my fictitious AI agent, supercoolcalendarcompany.com, whatever.
mm,
You know, something that's like, oh yeah, we organize your calendar. We'll help you, make your meetings more efficient or things along those lines. User gets it. It's great. They authorize and they say, yeah, I gave it access to my calendar. Well, maybe you didn't just give it access to your calendar. You might have given it access to your calendar, your email, your file store, other company records that the user's not even aware of. So, it depends on that scope. And a lot of times, folks who may not be as technical or may just be looking to, just accept whatever comes across. I mean, we all know the issue with, those license agreements everybody just clicks accept to. Similar type of issue. It's like, oh, this is the access it needs to work. Sure, go ahead. And then at that point, that agent can then, you mentioned applications. It can start acting on behalf of that user on maybe other applications. So let's say they experience a breach or get hacked and they're looking, the people who hack it are looking at, well, what does it have access to? Now they can tell those agents, will go try to farm email from here, or pull files from here. And all it's really supposed to be doing is touching your calendar. So it's a big mix of all of those things combined right now.
yeah, and I think most companies, to say the least, don't have human identity really figured out, and yet we're talking about a world where agents, supposedly might outnumber humans, 50 to 1 or something, and that's what a lot of the upside opportunity for AI exists. Where does it take to get their infrastructure, systems, processes ready for that kind of world?
Yeah. So from our perspective at Okta, we look at, we're a big identity company, so identity is
Mhm.
at the core of a lot of everything we do. And so we look at it very much in the scope of how can we govern these identities? How can we detect them, know where they are, make sure they're in your directory, make sure they're assigned a
Mm.
manager, treat it essentially as a first class identity. So do we know if this is an AI identity or not? How do we get control over it? Are we putting it through access reviews? Do we have somebody who's responsible for it? Can we identify it to begin with? And there's all sorts of things that we're working on, tooling, detection mechanisms, things along those lines that help people do that easier. So just as an example, a human user, they log in, they do an authorization flow. That's totally normal. A human user does not go do a client secret flow. Like that's totally abnormal. Same thing with like refresh tokens. A human user might want one every 1 hour. An agent might request one 500 times a minute. Like what are these anomalous behaviors that, you can utilize to detect something's wrong? This is probably an AI agent, a non-human identity impersonating a human. And how do we now bring that in-house and govern that identity?
Interesting. And what are some of the biggest mistakes you see companies doing right now with this whole identity management challenge or AI security in general? What are they doing wrong? What are the missteps, and how are you helping them there?
Yeah. So one of the biggest missteps I see is companies who are really trying to actually do the right thing. So they're going out and they're telling their employees like, hey, we're not fully up to date or ready yet for all this AI. So we just don't want you to use it yet. Or we're blocking these tools or we're doing something to prevent you from using them. And all that does is spur employees to then try to get around those safeguards or do things even in more of a shadowy way where they're accessing things that you explicitly said don't do. So a lot of times what I tell customers or just folks that I speak to about this subject is, you have to provide a path for it to be used legitimately and not trying to just, straight up run in fear and block it all because people are going to find a way. So if you're saying like, okay, fine, maybe we don't want you to use platform X, but we want you to use platform Y. Fine. Tell employees, use platform Y. We have a license agreement with platform Y. We know our data is protected. So at least then the majority are going to be going and using the tool that you want them to use and have a little more oversight over. So, trying to just kind of deny the reality of what's happening in this field is one of the biggest mistakes I see happening right now.
Interesting. And what about internally at Okta? I mean, how are you guys looking at agents? You started on this whole agentic workflow yet? And AI and security in terms of drinking your own champagne. How have you adopted some of these practices?
I like that you said drinking your own champagne. I used to say eat our own dog food, and then I got yelled
That's
at.
Disgusting. I've always wondered about that.
I was told we don't eat our own dog food. We drink our own champagne. Thank you. But regardless, no. So we have tooling in place, like I mentioned, about being able to identify these identities and things like that. But a big part of what we're doing right now is working in the standards world around these agents and AI. So, for instance, cross-app access is a really good example of that. So that's an extension that was added on to the OAuth standard that Okta played a big part in developing. And what that does is it's something that can be adopted by these independent software vendors who produce these AI agents. And then that allows your identity platform, like Okta, for instance, to more easily regulate these identities and identify them. It kind of takes that control that I was talking about with the users and employees out of their hands, where they're no longer the ones saying, I consent to this, or I'm going to allow this agent in. With cross-app access, the IT and security team has that ability. So they're able to say, okay, maybe I'm cool with supercoolcalendarorganizer.com, my fictitious example there. Maybe it's great. Maybe we approve of it. But we want to make sure that these specific users can use it. It's only locked down to the calendar. It can only perform these type of API calls. We have a tight rein around it, and we have a manager assigned to it and somebody who's responsible for it. So that's the way we approach it, is how can we make sure that we're governing these identities? As I mentioned, what we like to say is we like to call them first-class identities now, and making sure that they follow the same processes that a human user would, and that we're making sure that the IT and security team have full visibility over it.
Fantastic. So if we were to fast forward a couple of years, what would your agent look like? How would it behave and act as a coworker, a colleague of yours? Chief Security Officer Light or Agent Matt? What would you hope that agent to be doing and helping you with on a day-to-day basis?
It's really hard to speculate in the future of what they'll be capable of. I get asked a lot, are we going to get to a point where agents are approving other agents to do things? I do hope that there's always some sort of element of human in the loop for these AI agents, so that it's not going completely autonomous everywhere. And also that we have ways that we ensure that should there ever be a failure in the AI agent land, that we have a way to counteract that. For instance, if there's one human managing 20 AI identities and all of a sudden the AI goes down, can we still do the job without it? So making sure that they're tailored fit for the job you need them to do, but also having those contingencies in place to ensure that, you don't ever hit a really hard place if something goes wrong. But I'm hoping that they don't get to the point where they're approving themselves and creating themselves. I mean, they already are to a certain extent, but to a place where we're actually okay with that.
Yeah, interesting times. Well, maybe in a couple of years, I'll be on the beach and my agent will be doing these interviews and just interviewing your agent. So brave new world. Thanks so much for opening this window into machine identity and all the opportunities and challenges. Really great to catch up with a leader in this space.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to be here.
Thanks, Matt. And thanks, everyone, for listening, watching. Check out our TV show, TechImpact.tv on Bloomberg and Fox Business. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Matt.
Bye.